decorate that have unique shapes. That's how we do it. If you're a Photoshop person, you can use your layers function to do that. And there are actually videos online. Sawgrass has produced a video showing you how to do power clip, and we have another one getting ready to go online to show you how to do it with Photoshop. Very easy process. Okay, so we set our image up, and then what we're going to do is we're going to print it out onto transfer paper. And we're going to use, as I was mentioning, basically a stock printer. Now, it's not just any printer. It has to do with the printer head technology as to whether it can support sublimation ink or not. Therefore, at Sawgrass, since we're the manufacturer of the inks, we supply inks in cartridges for very specific printers. Okay, so for example, if you're buying the Ricoh 3300 here from Joto, you would then load it with your sublimation inks. They just plug in regular cartridges, and you're going to print with that. The only other thing you really need with this printer typically is if you're working with a Windows system specifically, we do have a software driver that's free of charge that will help you do a little bit of management for that printer for processing those inks. But beyond that, we're talking about an off-the-shelf printer. So now what happens is we take that image we created and we're going to print it out onto transfer paper. Very important aspect. If it's been a regular paper, ain't going to help. So it's going to be on transfer paper. Let me tell you, these Ricohs are fast. This Ricoh 3300 here, I'm going to show you an image in a few minutes. 8 by 10 inch image that printed in about 30 seconds. So full color, fast speed. All right, now after we print it, we're going to take that piece of transfer paper that's been printed, and we're going to take the item we're going to decorate, and we're going to put both of them under a heat press. And we're going to apply about 400 degrees temperature for about a minute with a pressure that's somewhere in the neighborhood of about 40 psi or so. And the sublimation chemical process takes place, and the image leaves the paper, goes onto that item we're decorating. We open the heat press, we throw away the paper. We're done with it, and we have a finished product there in our hand, and it is just quick, simple, clean, excellent results. Okay, really is. Very important, polymer surface and a 400 degrees temperature. But that's what we need to make it happen, and then we can turn around, hand it to the customer, and collect the money. The most important part of all. So what does it cost to get into startup? Well, you know what? That's a good question for Joto, because Joto has some packages online, and they can tell you a little bit more about that. But I'm here to tell you that within range, depending on what you need, okay? I'm just throwing a number out here, but you got startup equipment packages probably starting under $1,000, depending on the components that you need, okay? And Michael can talk more about that at the end of the presentation. So what I want you to carry with you is that's not a price tag. That's just kind of giving you a range for your understanding that you don't have to invest $10,000 here, or $5,000, or $3,000. I mean, we're talking about it's a very low startup cost to get into this. You already have the computer. Pretty much you're going to be buying a printer, inks, paper, and heat press. If you already have a heat press, you're not going to be buying that either, okay? You're that much closer to it. Here we go. Here's why I was talking about printing, because everybody wants to know, what does it cost to print? We took this image here, image courtesy of Great Dane Graphics, and you can see it's a fairly high-res, very vivid, a lot of detail type of image. We set that up as an 8 by 10 inch graphic, printed out in the Ricoh. In this case, it was a Ricoh 7000, and the average cost was about 64 cents, and it printed in under 30 seconds. Okay, I think on the Ricoh 3300, that's like 72 cents. Very low cost application. That's what we're getting at. I mean, that could go on a T-shirt. So you're talking about the front of a T-shirt from anywhere from about 64 to 72 cents or so. Very inexpensive process and quick. Okay, so one of the questions that might be coming to mind, if you're an apparel person, this is important to you. If you're not doing a lot of apparel, it really doesn't matter, okay? But it's about sublimating or printing on darts. This comes up all the time, so we'll just go ahead and tackle it. One of the things when we start talking about what we're going to decorate with any kind of ink, white is the best color. Doesn't matter what we're doing. If we're doing screen printing, we're doing direct garment, we're doing full-color process printing, white is the best color. I mean, what the heck? If you print it in your office on your HP printer, which you probably have, and you print on the white paper, it looks great. Take that same image and put it on yellow paper, and it looks weird. Okay, so white is the best color. Can you sublimate colors besides white? Yes. Okay, but white is the best color because white, especially with a dye process, is going to give us the most vivid colors of all. Very important aspect. Now, you know, in the world of screen printing, you hear discussions about printing on dark shirts, and you may hear references to something called white ink. White ink is not a common type of ink. If you look at your typical printer, your typical inkjet printer, it's a 4-color process, CMYK. And nowhere in that CMYK do you see the color white. And it was the same thing for a lot of other processes, screen printing included at one time. So how did you do darks if you don't have white ink? Well, you probably don't, okay? So the screen printers came up with a solution where they use actually a specialized ink that is white in color. And what they'll do is they'll actually put down a layer of white ink first, and then they cure it using a heat process, a flash cure, and then they're able to put whatever they want on top. So that's really cheating because they're still printing on white. They just created an artificial white layer on top of that black background. And what they did was they blacked out or blocked out, wrong word, they blocked out that background color, made it white so that everything else shows up. Now the other aspect of this, because white ink is a weird thing. I mean, white ink is kind of thick and gooey, and you got to cure it before you put the other ink on top. They leave the areas that need to be white in the design open. That's normal. That's natural. Your graphics programs do that automatically. Screen printing is a little different because of the fact that we're doing color separations. But with traditional graphics, white areas are left open, and that means that the white background shows through. Okay. All right. Well, if we go over to digital printing, and most digital printing processes do not have white ink, including sublimation. Some do, but most don't. What happens is when we print on white, anything that's in the background shows through because the area of white in the design is left open. So you see the eagle looks good. Over here, eagle looks a little blue in the face. He looks down in the dumps. He's got the blues, okay? But that's an issue. So white ink has two purposes. If you have a white ink process, you're building a background to block out the color of the garment that you're on, and you're also recreating the color white when you're dealing with non-white surfaces. This really is only a problem with apparel because with apparel, typically the garment is larger than the image. With just about everything else we do with sublimation, the image itself is larger than what's being decorated, and that makes a huge difference. Because now when we start talking about, let's say that we're going to do a mouse pad or a photo panel or a sign, a lot of these items, just like you see on the screen, you have a rectangular white area. When they come from the manufacturer, ready to be sublimated, they have a white surface. Even if it's like a wooden base, like you're doing a plaque that looks wood, and it actually is wood, there's a white surface where you're going to decorate. And then you create your image to be actually slightly larger than that. We're going to do full bleed. And by doing that, we're completely covering the background. Where I needed white to show through is left open, and the white background color comes through. Now, if I really wanted that item to be, let's say, black, then I don't go look for a black item to decorate. I find a white item, but I inject the color black as part of the graphic such that I'm doing full coverage. I'm just recoloring whatever it is that I'm printing on. So that's how we get around that with sublimation. The only time we run into those problems are with the darker garments, okay, where we have a non-white surface. That's the only time that's even really an issue at all. And yes, you can sublimate colored items. There's people out there that say you can't. Yes, you can. The ink color or dye must always be darker than the background. That's the key. So you want to do a dark red shirt. Black works really well, but pink doesn't. So, keep those kind of things in mind. You can see here even, this is, here's a yellow garment that's been sublimated, came out great. Here's a red garment that has, the black sublimation there, came out great. It's not going to wash out. It's not going to fade. Show me any other process, especially with apparel, that doesn't fade when you wash it. So markets for sublimation, this is the real meat of everything. We want to make money with sublimation, right? So, what about all these different market opportunities? Well, let me tell you, whether you know it or not, and most people don't, because most people don't know what sublimation is everywhere. It's everywhere in our life, okay? From apparel to souvenirs to awards to gifts. People, they like it. They buy it. But interesting enough, most don't know what it is, okay? So if you go around and say, hi, I'm Jimmy, I sell sublimation, they don't know what that is, okay? So it's kind of important that you really focus on something other than process when you're talking about what it is you do and what it is you offer. But look at some of the markets. Like if we talk about the school marketplace, schools really have no money, okay? But there's all kinds of sub things going on, with spirit and awards and all these kind of things, branding, imaging. Just look at all these different products on the screen. They've all been sublimated. Here's an example I was talking about. This item here looks like a football, this particular plaque. Started out as a white plaque. It might look to you like it started out as a blue plaque. No, it started out as white, and then we sublimated not only the picture and the text, but the whole background colorization and everything to make it match with the school colors. Same thing with this plaque up here, a little bit dark on your screen, but again, it started with a white surface, and then we just put in one simple transfer, recolored the whole thing. Everything on here pretty much has been done that way. Corporate and small business, we have a lot of opportunities here for signage, promotional products, apparel, again, awards. A lot of businesses do awards, to their staff members. But probably one of the hottest things is promotional products, being able to provide them with items to help brand themselves and brand their business. And this just shows you, again, the range of things that we have out there that can be sublimated. There's just so many different items that we can work with. It's really literally hundreds of items that can be sublimated. And maybe you're into the gifts and personalization marketplace. That's a pretty hot area. And there's a lot of people who do nothing but like photo gifts and, items to commemorate things like graduations and weddings and birthdays. And, the list is long, pet items, all these things. And there tend to be onesies and twosies. But when you talk about a process where you can print and press in 2 minutes or less, and you're using a lot of templates to set up your artwork, you're talking about something you can turn pretty fast and then go around and charge a huge markup for it, and that becomes key with that particular marketplace. So let's look a little deeper into the concept of making money with sublimation, of actually going out and selling it the right way. Okay, as I was saying, a lot of your customers don't really know what sublimation is, so they don't know to ask for it. And when you actually try to tell people what it is you do, and you talk about sublimation, until you educate them, they don't really know what it is. And quite honestly, a lot of them don't care. So the reality is, do you really understand yourself what is the right angle to sell to people? Okay? And that's where I get to when I talk about what is it that you're selling. Because a lot of people don't really understand what they're selling, and thus they don't do a good job of selling sublimation, or for that matter, probably anything else. So we're going to go through a series of visual tests so I can better explain what I'm talking about, so I can give you a little different angle on the question of what are you selling. So what is this? You look on the screen, first thing you see here is a group of mouse pads. So if you raise your hand and say, hey, you know what, Jimmy, those are mouse pads, I'll say, congratulations, you got that right. Now someone else is probably going to raise their hand and say, hey, you know what, those are sublimated mouse pads. I'm like, excellent, you got the technology right too, okay? But at the end of the day, both of those answers are wrong, because what this really is advertising. And that's key, because when you're going to go into the customer to sell them mouse pads, don't start off on a discussion of sublimated mouse pads. Who cares? You got to give these people a compelling reason to buy something from you, okay? And, just telling you that sublimation is a really cool process is probably not good enough. What you want to do is show them or give them ways to get their name in front of other people via advertising, via promotional products, because that's what this is. And if you want to get some ammunition for selling promotional products, let me tell you, both PPAI, the Promotional Products Association, and ASI, the Ad Specialty Institute, have all kinds of fascinating numbers for you, just to tell you how powerful that particular marketplace is. It really and truly is almost mind-boggling. Here, I'll give you a couple of stats right off the bat, just that you can kind of tuck under your belt there. 52% of people do business with the company after receiving a promotional product from that company. That's pretty powerful, and that's pretty powerful messaging for you to give the client when you're talking about selling them products they can advertise, with. 76% of them recall the name advertised on a promotional product. 55% of people keep promotional products for more than a year, and 50% use them daily. That is, wow, those are big numbers. And by the way, it's like a $19 billion industry, promotional products. Huge. Okay, absolutely huge. So anyway, those are compelling messages for why people should buy, but you're always going to be looking for putting a spin on it so that you can really get your clients' interest going. Now, here's an example of a sales angle that I have been known to use based